Hello everyone and welcome. It's Dave Bredhauer. Today I'm going to show you a watercolor technique I call the watercolor dip. I'm going to be using the Happy Birthday upright script from Memory Box and the stitched butterfly trio from Poppystamps for this first card. We'll begin by cutting these shapes out of watercolor paper. It can be hot press or cold press. The texture doesn't matter too much, but it does need to be watercolor paper because we're going to be using a lot of water on this technique. You'll want to have a small tub of water nearby, just large enough to accommodate the die cut pieces. And all you'll do is throw them into the water and let them soak there a while. I'm going to stick them in and then I'll push them down so that they're submerged, and you can leave them in there as long as you like. I leave them even overnight. They'll hold up just fine, but at least 15 minutes. Now that the pieces have had a good soak, take them out and put them on your work surface. I'm going to be using Peerless watercolors for the demo today, and I've cut little pieces of my Peerless watercolor sheets and made a palette out of them, and then I'm going to just dip into the paint and apply it to the wet watercolor piece. I'm beginning in the middle so that the color is strongest towards the center of the butterfly, and then as you move further out, it'll weaken. You need to think of watercolor in terms of layers. This will be your first layer. So I've applied color. Now I'm going to add a little bit more color to my brush, and I'm going to start in the middle again and start working it over an area that had weaker color from that first pass. Just start in the middle, pull to the edge, make sure that things stay nice and wet as you go. I'm going to add another color now. I started with cobalt blue, but now I'm going to try butterfly wing blue, and this will add just a little bit of interest. It'll be slightly different, maybe a little bit more green than that original color. But I think layering with different colors just makes the whole process more interesting. I'm going to add just plain water now and then just to help smooth things out. As long as you stay wet, you won't have any hard lines develop on the watercolor piece. And that way your final project will have a nice smooth look to it. You can put as many layers as you want to on this piece. I would say plan on doing at least 2 or 3 layers, but just keep going until you're satisfied with how it transitions from the middle to the edge. I'll apply one more color, a stronger, darker blue color from the Peerless watercolor line, to the middle, and then blend that out towards the edge. Since the die cut is saturated with water, it really helps make this blending process easier. If you've struggled with blending before, this is a good elementary step to making things work better for you. So now I'm going to take you through the process of applying lots of different colors across a die cut. I have the Happy Birthday upright script cut out here. We're just going to do the birthday word to begin with. And I'm going to start applying color across the rainbow, trying to get a different color on each letter as I go. I've already soaked the birthday die cut in water for a while. I think this one's soaked for about 20 minutes or so. And I've put it on my work surface. And you can see that I'm dabbing the color on as I go. Now the die cut's automatically going to start drying out. It depends on your conditions in your craft room, how dry the area is and how quickly it's going to dry out. But you can always add some more water, and just you'll notice as you go if it's more difficult to have that paint blend around the die cut, just add a little bit more liquid and that'll make it easier for things to blend with other colors. So I'm applying a red, orange, yellow. I've sort of chosen an aqua, then into a blue. I'm just following the colors of the rainbow here, and this is going to be my first layer. Remember that you're going to have to apply a couple layers to make sure that the color is nice and saturated on your die cut, and you might end up applying maybe 3 layers. I would say always plan on at least 2 to 3 layers to get a nice saturated color. After I finish applying the purple color, I'm going to start going back over this die cut with another layer. I'll begin with the blue. I'm touching a little bit into the purple layer, then I'm going to apply a little bit more blue over the original blue layer and some of that aqua color. I want to start building up the color. Now I've found that this is a really good way to conserve how much paint you use. You're only using paint right on the die cut areas that you're going to be working with on your card, rather than applying a big wash of paint across a watercolor piece of paper and then die cutting it. you're only applying the paint right to where the die cut is, so you don't use as much paint. Okay, I'm just going to touch up the yellow here a little bit more. See that I'm going yellow right over into the orange layer. When you add color, make sure that you're adding the color over the area that you want and then a little bit into that next color, and that'll help with the whole blending process. I'll finish up with the red here, a nice strong red. You can see what a difference it makes to put another layer of red on there. And I'll touch a little water on there and let that dry. I want to show you a sped up version just using a different palette. This time I'm starting with my purple, and you can see that as you dab at it, that paint really wants to spread out and do most of the work for you. I have to control myself not to go back and fuss with it too much, because most of the time everything blends out on its own. I'll just add dabs of color here and there, and that wet surface just sort of draws the color into the next color. As long as you can be comfortable with letting that process happen and not interfere with it, your results will turn out pretty great. Now you'll just repeat the process with the word happy, and you can do any color combination you like. If you stay in rainbow order, it is easier to blend, but I encourage you to try different setups. Maybe you might want to blend the purple into the green or the orange into the blue. Sometimes you might make a little mud, but that's what this process is all about. We're going to use a stitched oval layer set from our Open Studio line. These are oval cutouts. They come in a bunch of different sizes. There's 8 different sizes in this set, and they have a nice stitched line on the inside, which adds a little bit of texture. I'm going to use the 3rd size down to cut out a nice white cardstock layer. I'm going to apply some adhesive from my tape gun to the back of it just to adhere that to my card. It's just a plain 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, and I'm going to stick that right in the middle. I decided to make the background pretty simple since there's going to be a lot of color on this card. I want that rainbow watercolor look to really be the centerpiece of what's going on in this design. Just make sure your butterfly and your greetings are all dry, and this card is ready to go. Now here's a bonus look using the same technique. I've got some glossy accents, and I'm going to apply some dots in a pattern on the butterfly wings. Add a few dots to the tips of the butterfly wings and make sure that they're completely dry. Then soak that watercolor piece in your tub of water for at least 15 minutes or so, and then you can begin applying your colors. I put pink in the middle of this medium-sized butterfly, and I'm putting blue at the tips of the wings. Add some plain water as you go so that when the blue meets the pink, it's going to create a 3rd color, in this case a purple, where that transition happens. Just keep applying just as you did in the first project. Now I'm going to show you the same idea. This is the bigger butterfly here. I've put yellow in the middle, I put pink at the tips, and this is my 3rd layer. You can see how it's building up. I add some plain water when I want things to transition. And once it's dry, those dots of glossy accents show up as a white pattern. This next project is going to illustrate just how intricate you can get with your paint application. I'm going to be using the large Antilles floral right corner from Memory Box. I've die cut it out of watercolor paper, and I'm soaking it in my water tub, and then once it's good and saturated, I'll put it on my work surface and start applying paint. I'll begin with the centers. I want a nice bright yellow in the center, and then for the petals of the flower, I'm going to use the Peerless Watercolors Scarlet Vermilion color, and just start applying that to the edge, let it blend in. The water's going to carry it a little bit towards the center, and just plan on doing several layers here. I've begun with one flower, and then I'm moving on to the next one. I'll add sort of a base layer where it's nice and weak and starts to blend into the middle. Then I'll go back and add some stronger color and let that blend into the original layer, you'll see little rivers of color start to develop and pull towards that center. It's really quite the magical process. Now by the time I get to the third flower, you'll see that things have dried out, but don't worry. All you have to do is pick it up, put it back into the tub of water, and re-soak it. That paint will still want to stay on your watercolor paper. It might fade a little bit, but if anything, it's going to help the blending process. So just pull it out. I'll leave it in there maybe a minute or so, and then put it back on your work surface, and it's good to go with a fresh layer of paint. So I can continue the process, just adding some at the edges and then pulling the weaker towards the middle. You can still add plain water now and then just to make sure that things stay nice and wet. But that's another alternative if you find that your project has started to dry out. The next step is to start coloring in all the little stems and leaves on the lower portion of the die cut. I've applied some yellow here and there to different stems and different portions of the leaves, and then I'm going to go back and start applying a green color along different areas as well. You don't necessarily want this to be super smooth. You want to think of shadows and light, almost like the sun is sort of hitting the different areas at different points with different intensity. So I'm not being too careful about where the green's going and where the yellow's going. I do want all of the watercolor paper to be painted, but I want you to skip around a little bit. As you layer this green and this yellow together, there'll be lighter spots and darker spots, and I think a complicated design like all these stems really makes it easier to play around and just have fun with this portion of the design. The only part that I'm avoiding are these little areas where there's a little flower or a little something going on at the end of the stem, because I want to go back and add a little bit of that scarlet vermilion color. I'll play around. Sometimes it'll be more wet, sometimes it'll be more dry, so that creates different intensities of that scarlet color. Put that aside to dry, and we're going to get the next portion of the project going with the card. I'm preparing my cream-colored note card with two colors of Distress Oxide ink. The first is fossilized amber. I'm just using a sponge to put some color right along the edge of the card. This is a great ink for blending out, gives a nice smooth appearance. It takes very little effort to make this look nice and soft and to blend a couple areas together. The second color is peeled paint, again a Distress Oxide color, and we're going to apply it, bring it onto that original fossilized amber color, then off, and just keep filling in the edges until you're happy with the results. I'm going to add a sentiment from one of the clear stamp sets from Open Studio. This is the Party Time clear stamp set, and it has a nice happy birthday on there. I'm stamping it in a distress ink called Ground Espresso, just a nice dark brown ink. I'll practice first, and then I'm going to stamp my actual project. I'm going to stamp it a little bit to the left because the die cut's going to be on the right side of the card. And all it takes now is a little bit of glue and you're all finished. I thought I'd use this great set from Poppystamps for this next card. This is the stitched tunnel tags. They come in a variety of sizes in the set. I'm going to use the 4th size down to create a layer for my sentiment. I'll just cut this out of plain white cardstock for the tag, but the cool thing about this set is it has this little piece in there that can create a hole, and the hole has a nice little stitching texture around it. So you'll just take that piece out, you'll put it at the very tip of your tag, and just push it down, hold it on there with a piece of tape, and run it back through your die cut machine again, and then you have a great little hole that matches the stitching element on the outside of the tag. And there you go. It's all ready to pop a little ribbon in there, and you have a great looking tag. I'm also going to use the Paintbrush Happy die. This is from Memory Box. I was inspired with a watercolor look, and this was a great font that I used to make this happy word. And we're going to apply the paint in the exact same way that we did before. Make sure that the die cut piece is completely saturated. You're just going to soak it in that tub of water, and then you're going to start applying red, orange, and yellow across the length of the die cut. You'll see that it blends out exactly the same way as it did before. We're just adding a little bit of color as you go. This is our first layer. Then we'll go back and add some more color. This will intensify things. You can see what a difference putting another layer of that red on there makes. Then I'm going to apply some more of the orange. I'm going to put orange right in the middle, and then I'm going to finish with yellow. Notice that I'm putting that yellow a little bit onto the orange area. That's going to help with the blending. And I'm going to pick up just a little bit of orange and pull it over on top of that yellow area to finish the blend. Next, I'll take the birthday word from that original set, the party time that we used on the other card. I'm going to stamp it in Distress Oxide Fired Brick, and you just need to position it in the lower area of the tag so that you can leave room to put that happy die cut on there. Once it's dry, you're just going to put that right above the birthday, add some brightly colored ribbon, and you're done. Now that you've mastered how much water you need to use and how quickly you need to paint, we're going to start with our final project. We're using the hovering butterfly frame from Memory Box. I'm going to cut it out of a piece of watercolor paper. The actual design isn't too intricate, so it's a pretty easy process to get the extra pieces out of there. And once that's been removed, you're going to soak it, just like the other projects, in your tub of water. Just push it in there. I would keep this in here a little bit longer than you would the other pieces because it's such a large surface. You want it good and soaked. And then choose a rainbow of colors from the Peerless watercolor line to start your process. Now, you know that if you run out of enough moisture on your watercolor paper, you can just soak that back in the tub, or you can continue to apply more water as you go. Just make sure that it stays really wet. This is a large area, and you don't want to run out of any extra water because remember, water is going to do all the work for you. I'm going to speed up the process a little bit here. I've begun with yellow, I've switched to orange, and now I've transitioned to a red color. Now I'm going to add a little pink. You're just going to play along the lines of the rainbow. Just make sure that as you transition from one color to the next, make it easy on yourself, add lots of water, and just go with the next rainbow order of color to make it so that those transitions and blending are effortless. I'm adding purple now, just a nice base layer. Sometimes things are going to be stronger in some areas and lighter in other areas. That's okay. That's what watercolor looks like. As you come towards the end, you just need to meet that final color with one of the original colors, moving the blue into the yellow here, and it's making a green. Now put it on a clean work surface and go back. You might need to do a few touch-ups here and there just to make sure that the color is complete. Set that aside to dry, and once it's ready, I'm going to use some small dots of liquid adhesive in as many spots as I can get on the back of the die, every half inch or so. And then I'll apply that to an off-white piece of cardstock cut into an A2 size note card. I'll use a simple sentiment. It's the Poppystamps Scribble Thank You. I'll just cut that out of some black cardstock and adhere it to the middle of the card. I hope you've enjoyed today's watercolor dip techniques, and I encourage you to create your own watercolor masterpieces.